We have noted that there were ongoing discussions and concerns that were raised by our people about the correctness and maybe the timing of the decisions that were taken by the African National Congress. And we also would like to say that in its own discussion, the Provincial Executive Committee departed from the long-held view of our movement that the ANC is and remains the parliament of the people, rather than a property of its own few paid-up members. This is a historic position which has sustained the ANC for more than a century of its existence and remains even more relevant today. The ANC enjoys the support of millions of our people who identify with the historic mission and the vision of the ANC of creating a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and a prosperous society. It is within this historic mission of the ANC that those who are privileged to be members and leaders at any given moment should understand the type of the organization they belong to and are leading. A vital important part of the position adopted and motivated the Provincial Executive Committee in its discussions are concerns expressed by a number of people relating to the resolutions of the ANC adopted by the 54th National Congress, which are binding to all of us as structures and members of the African National Congress. Among others, the resolutions have said, and I quote, on strengthening the ANC and its role in society. The National Conference noted that there is a perception that ANC leaders are becoming a political elite, removed from the people, and that our movement no longer reflects the concerns and the issues of the motive forces. It further said that we need to urgently close the gap between us and the people, strive to be a progressive presence in every community and sector that listens to the people, works with them, respond to their concerns and problems, and respect all our people. In responding to these challenges, the conference that we're referring to as well, the 54th National Conference, therefore, among other things, arrived at a resolution that we need to strengthen our understanding of our values, ethics, morality, and the demands that the people, the Constitution, and the rule of law place on us as the guardians of the state and its resources. It was in this context that the conference demanded that every cadre accused or reported to be involved in corrupt practices should account to the Integrity Commission or face disciplinary processes. The conference further agreed that comrades who are facing these challenges and fail to appear before and explain their situation to the organization through relevant platforms, or fail to step down or step aside, should then be, while facing disciplinary or investigative or prosecutorial procedures. So at the end of the reflection of these resolutions, and as I said, as guided by the position of our movement, the provincial officials had a discussion with our provincial deputy chairperson, Comrade Michael Maguya Kulu, and Comrade Zandile Kumate, who unfortunately both of them are facing what the conference has defined as prosecutorial procedures. The primary objective of this political discussion was to ascertain the contribution of these comrades. Firstly, to understand the situation relating to their ongoing cases, but also to gain an understanding on their part on how best, in their respective opinions, the movement which they belong to can be insulated from the challenges they face in order to safeguard its integrity and standing in society. And of course, this engagement was also happening within the context of the letter that was written by the President of the ANC, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, in which he called on all members of the ANC to conduct what he referred to as an honest introspection about the challenges that we face. The Provincial Executive Committee earlier this morning had a discussion around these matters, compelled by the necessity to respond to the discourse in society, the conversation that has erupted and has been sustained as a consequence of our decision to make deployment to the provincial legislature. Firstly, the PEC agreed that, one, the ANC remains the parliament of the people. And because of that character, it has an abiding obligation through its elected leadership to ensure that when society expresses concerns about the direction of our movement, those concerns must be taken seriously and be reflected upon. The PEC also agreed that there was a need for it to convene in an extraordinary meeting like we did this morning, as a recognition of the fact that as an organization, we are at the service of our people and we serve at their own behest. And that when they raise certain questions and certain challenges with regard to the positions we have adopted, it becomes important that we must have a reflection, an honest reflection about the issues raised by our people. At the end of its discussion and having taken into consideration all other issues that have been before the Provincial Executive Committee and the work that was done by the provincial officials, correctly to engage with the comrades who are in conflict with the law, the Provincial Executive Committee made the following decisions. Firstly, that all comrades who are charged are directed to step aside from their responsibilities immediately, both from the movement and the state, and for them to appear before the Integrity Commission. Secondly, that during the period leading to their appearance before the Integrity Commission, such comrades are not permitted or allowed to stand for or represent the African National Congress. Thirdly, that the Integrity Commission, the Provincial Integrity Commission, would be expected to ensure that they discharge their responsibilities within the shortest reasonable period of time, so that the matters can ultimately come before the Provincial Executive Committee for a finality. Fourthly, that the Provincial Executive Committee mandated the Provincial Chairperson and the Provincial Secretary to engage with the National Executive Committee later today and request them to develop a clear guidelines on how to deal with cases of comrades who are implicated in one form or another in some scandals that have a potential to tarnish the image of the ANC, but are not yet or are not facing what is called prosecutorial procedures or charged by the court of law. Lastly, that the NEC will also be engaged to ensure that these guiding principles, while are being developed, our position as the ANC in the province is that we should have a common approach across the country and in the entire organization, and that comrades, as we indicated earlier on, who unfortunately find themselves in difficulties with the law, do not continue to represent or serve in the organs of the ANC and the state, pending their appearance before the Integrity Commission, which will, at the end, advise the elected leadership of the African National Congress about the next course of action. The ANC Provincial Executive Committee takes that decision in the way that it has done. Firstly, as we said, out of the recognition that we have taken a decision that has raised certain questions in society, which obligated us to have considered reflection. But secondly, that in the course of the reflection on our own decisions, it was therefore appropriate that we also refer some of the matters to a body that does not sit in the Provincial Executive Committee, so that whatever conclusion ultimately is arrived at, it's not just the PEC becoming a referee and a player, but the PEC plays its part, gets confronted by challenges, takes certain decisions, but refers some of the matters to the Integrity Commission of the ANC, so that it will be easy for the Provincial Executive Committee as well to be guided by comrades who are charged with the responsibility of helping the ANC to remain on a higher moral ground and with ethical leadership. So that is briefly the summary of what the Provincial Executive Committee has had to discuss this morning and decided upon. Thank you very much, Comrade Laganip. And of course, we have with us today the Provincial Chairperson of the ANC, because we were of the view that given the centrality of the issues we are raising and the importance of the discourse that we are waging around this question, it will be important that both the Provincial Chairperson and the Provincial Secretary should be in the platform to further explain and clarify positions adopted by the collective of the PEC. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nopala. There is a brief of the outcome of the special PEC. We'll allow a platform for questions of clarities. Sorting number 1, bill number 2, bill number 3, bill number 4. So Carla will start here, we'll join later on that other spot.
Thank you, Mashogo. Bongan Kina from KZN. I just want to get the clarity from Unobana, so it is confirmed that the deputy chairperson, Mafumaboya Kulu, and the recently sworn MPL Zandile Kumete have been removed from their position. Just what the widow's name specifically to get clarity. Also, now if Mafumaboya Kulu has indeed been removed, what will happen to his position? What will be the procedure?
Okay. Number 2.
Thanks. It's Kavil from News 24. I mean, obviously, it appears that comrades Zandile Kumete and Mike Maboyokulu will have to step aside. I mean, how does the party feel? Because, you know, in one breath last week, you know, she was introduced into the COPTA portfolio committee and as an MPL. Now the party's backtracking. I mean, obviously, it doesn't look good to the public with the indecisiveness. So what informed the decision to have her firstly part of the KZN legislature and then inducted into the portfolio committee and then the removal, obviously, from that?
3.
Okay, I wanted to ask what Kavil asked, but my other one would be, you are, I beg your pardon, I am from the SABC. To you, Nopala and Che, you've only spoken about Mam Kumete and Mafumaboya Kulu, but you also have councillors, you have other leaders within the party, even though at council level and who are leading in branches, who are also in court for various cases. What about them? Is this decision only to the two because of they are senior in the party, but you have councillors as well that have been charged for a number of cases, murder, corruption, what happens to them as well? They're also serving in the branches and they're also representing the party in local government.
Yes. Kabat. Those were the only 4 questions that spelling out or asitate pungulunga na manje.
Yeah, without the son. No.
Okay.
So they are removal. So what will it mean? So was about voting. They are removal pending the appearance in the regular committee. Right? Now, what will happen if they are found not guilty by that commission? Will they go back to their positions? What will be happening during their suspension? It is the positions. Can you see Mafumaboya being replaced in the legislature? ANC swearing in a new member and all those things? So that's it.
Okay. Can we start with this first round of hands and respond on them?
Well, I think thank you very much for the questions. Let me start with the first question. Actually, the last question, in a way, answered the first question. The two comrades are not removed. They are required to step aside. What does that mean? It effectively means that they are prohibited from executing responsibilities attended to them by virtue of being the provincial deputy chairperson of the ANC and an MPL, respectively. So in essence, they are not resigning. They are still part of Comrade Zandile remains a member of the provincial legislature, pending the processes that, one, are in court, but also the work that will be done by the Integrated Commission. The same applies as well to Comrade Mike Mabuyakula, and precisely because of what I think one of the questions was also indicating, that the Provincial Executive Committee is not a judicial commission of inquiry or a court of law. It is not capable of pronouncing on matters that have got to do with the courts and legalities. It has a mandate to deal with the political responsibilities of the ANC. And that is why it could not take decisions that are not consistent with the responsibilities that the PEC has. And that is the reason why that matter is handled in that way. How do we feel about the fact that Comrade Zandile has just been introduced in the committees? Look, as I said earlier on, we as members of the ANC, we are and we should be less concerned about how we feel about ourselves. What is the feeling of the nation? What is the state of the nation in relation to a decision that we have taken? What are their own attitude and their approach? So what becomes fundamental for the ANC, which characterizes itself correctly as the parliament of the people, is that first and foremost, before its own members' feeling, it must say, what is the society saying? So it's not, we don't have any feeling about the fact that she had an opportunity. The legislature was doing what they were supposed to do. If you are sworn in, you must be introduced to various committees that you are deployed to participate at. What was a miscommunication that we must clarify today was a wrong information that Comrade Zandile Kumete is deployed as a chairperson of a portfolio committee of COCT. That was not true. It was not true, it is not true today. And I think that is a confusion that was once there that I think we needed to clarify. Let me leave the other questions for the chair to make additions. I think I've left other 2, if not 3 questions that came about the other councillors, as well as what if not found guilty.
No, thanks. If not found guilty, they will resume their responsibilities and then continue. So we are saying, step aside, meaning they are not going to participate in activities of the ANC. They are not going to represent the ANC in any platform up until the matter is processed by the Integrity Commission. Once the matter is processed by the Integrity Commission, it should then be brought to the ANC PEC. Then they resume. If they are not found guilty, they will then go to their respective positions and continue. The process about filling of or replacement in the two, therefore, does not arise for a discussion now, because it will only arise after the process of the Integrity Commission. What is important about this is that the ANC, firstly, it is taking now a view that our matters must not only be dependent in court, but we know that there are court processes, but the ANC must then find a way of dealing with own image, the integrity, in line with its character and values. So that's why we are saying, and if you would see, our position is not also to undermine the rights of those. This is not a judgment. It does not relate, or it should not be interpreted as a judgment on those individuals. So it is about how we save the integrity of the ANC. So that's how one can then respond to that question. What about councillors? I think it's a critical question. That's why we are saying, in line with the resolution of the National Conference, we should develop the guidelines from national. But we will expect that if there is a councillor who is charged, the same should apply in line with the guideline, with the resolutions of the National Conference. Meaning, once you are charged, you step aside, you go through the integrity process. And the resolution further says, the members who are charged or facing allegations must present themselves to the Integrity Commission. If they don't do that, even after being called, they can then be subjected to the DC of the ANC. That's what the resolution of the conference is saying. So we should be bold to implement that resolution as such. And it must be clear, the PEC is unanimous and united around this view that while it is important to protect the right of members, it is equally important to protect the integrity and the standing of the African National Congress in the society. Why the ANC is backtracking or not? Look, the decision, we must here clarify how did we take this decision. The decision to deploy Comrade Zandile Fumete to the legislature was taken last year. When they were recalled, the ANC national officials in a meeting with the provincial officials said it would be ideal to take these comrades, in particular the outgoing mayor, and deploy her in another sphere. Because if she remains a councillor here and you get another mayor, it then creates an unhealthy situation. Now, we could not do that at that time because the list is changed once. So we had submitted the list to the IEC. So if we then, after a year, when we get a right to review the list, we had to start from that decision, effect that decision. And I hear, yes, we'll go to the NEC, we will present ourselves, but it's not an issue that it's only about the province, but also the national was part of that decision. So I thought I should clarify that, and it should be clear as to what informs this approach we are taking. So we will be engaging with the NEC, understanding and moving from this principled position of the PEC that says if a comrade is charged, that comrade must excuse himself or recuse himself for that time and go through the integrity process.
Okay, can we go to the link first? Yeah, I'm seeing the hands. There are those who are in the link want to make questions, Joe. No hands up. Okay, Mkelega Memes.
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, proceed, Hans.
Proceed.
Oh, sure. I would like to greet everyone there and go to FT party. And I want to find out if this decision, we remember that when prior to the provincial conference, there was a division within the ruling party, which was termed factionalism. And then after the conference, which happened
Oh, there was only one, all right. Let us start with 1, 2, 3, 4, in that sequence.
Thank you so much, Tuba from ENCA. I will start from what Hansi was asking as well. Here you are talking about the process that is aside from court. But the reason why these people, these leaders are being asked to step aside is because they are facing charges, court charges. What will happen in a case where, I will make an example, Umamuzan Bekumete is found guilty by the Integrity Commission, and then weeks later, the court withdraws charges against him. And I hear Ustalo trying to explain the decision, how the decision was taken of deploying Umamuzandile to legislature. Is this not a political ongoing? I mean, we didn't know that there was this decision that was taken last year. People of this country and the province didn't know that. It's only the leaders of the ANC that were aware that the Umamzandile should be in the legislature. To us, we only heard about this decision a week ago. Now you are telling us again that she must step aside. And again, what will happen to her position in legislature while she's dealing with the Integrity Commission? You need members to deal with your issues and the mandates of the party within legislature. Don't you think that, or you're going to send in another person that is going to replace her? And again, lastly, there is an NEC meeting that is going to sit, I believe, later this afternoon. You're going to present your position to the NEC. Are you going to influence the NEC also to look this matter, even in other provinces, even within the national structure, because we know that there are even leaders within the NEC that have been appointed by either the public protector and other investigations, even the Integrity Commission. Thank you.
Number 2.
Okay. My question goes to Chair. Chair, I hear you trying to speak about saving the integrity of the ANC, and that what you're doing now, the resolutions from the party's 54th conference. But I'm looking at the time when the conference started to now. Why is it taking you so long? There's been so many cases that your members and leaders have been involved in. Why are you only seeing it important now to save the integrity of the ANC? Second one, the DSG, Kesi Duarte, spoke about, seemed in an interview that you did with the SABC as though they did not quite understand your decision as the leaders of the ANC to deploy Mam Kumete to the legislature. Now, if you're saying this was discussed with national leaders, was she not being truthful then in her interview with us, with Samgela in Johannesburg? And then my last one, if you're saying Mam Kumete will remain as the MP, I'm speaking about her salary. What then happens? You're removing her from active work as an MPL, but she's earning a salary. What's going to happen to her? Is she going to continue to receive a salary, yet she's not working for that month?
By 3.
Mine was the same question about will she still get paid as an MPL, or was her service just for that 1 week period? And if she is getting paid as an MPL, we were talking about sort of, it's the exact same question as I am now.
Okay. Yes, Pumut.
So I was going to answer about the my next question would be like this PEC decision. Is it in line with what was taken in Nazareth? Also, when that resolution talks about a position, does it meant that it's an MEC or minister? Because prior to this PEC special meeting of today, Mamba the supporters told me that they believe that okay, ANC will be consistent national because we have the likes of Ubongo that. So who's facing bribery charges? He that will be remained an MP as we speak. Is it only applying to the province, where nationally it's talking about something else, or where Ubongo comes from in Pumadang also, maybe they put a suit and remove them? Was this only the position of the PC of Town?
Okay, before, can we take the Kona Mongo Teo Kona Lapocho?
Yes, once.
Okay. Ngicela ukubuza ukuthi njengoba abahoxa abantu ababhekene namacala, does that mean namakhansela azohoxa yini? And ngesikhathi ehoxile ey'khundleni zawo, umsebenzi uzobe wenziwa ubani? How does that impact the service delivery? Does the ANC have plans to ensure ukuthi services are still delivered to the people while their members are facing the integrity commission?
You are the only one. Kono Moy, another one.
Hello? Hello?
Proceed then.
Okay, just one question. Can I ask? Can I ask?
Hey,
Can I hand?
Okay. I just wanted to find out.
Hansi usashona phi? Every time we shall semgodini. We can't hear. Okay, those are the only questions. No balance.
No, thanks. I think maybe let me start, and as I did before, I will deal with some of the questions and others will be answered by our provincial chairperson. Let me start with the first one from Bongan Hansen. That when we are taking a decision which involves the provincial deputy chairperson of the ANC, aren't we undermining the unit we have harnessed over the past 2 years? Aren't we going to cause divisions? I think that's an important question, but I think we have to explain it in this context. Our unity is supposed to be and is actually based on certain values, and these values are anchored on the character and the mandate of the African National Congress. We are not united for sake of unity. We are united around certain values of our movement. And we were united as well in the understanding that at all material times, we have to be the guardians. We must, in our conduct, be the guardians of the best value systems in society, acting on behalf of the African National Congress. So the provincial deputy chairperson has been part of this process from the officials to the provincial executive committee. The assurance I want to give to the public is that he is not only in support of this decision, but is one of the ardent advocates of the decision. He's highly committed to it because, as I said, he understands and he has internalized, like all of us, the importance of understanding that our unity must transcend personal circumstances, but it must be about the historic mission of the African National Congress. And so anybody and anyone who may be concerned that this decision might have consequences for our unity in the province, instead it will consolidate us further. You will see the province growing again as it has been doing for the past 2 years in the unity and the consolidation of the organization. Will the IC, the Integrity Commission, wait for court processes? No, it won't. Their mandate are also not the same. The court is meant to determine beyond reasonable doubt whether or not a person is guilty of the offense that he or she is charged for. And that's not the mandate of the Intergrid Commission. The mandate of the Intergrid Commission is to answer the question, to what extent does your act of omission or commission impact on the standing and the image of the African National Congress? That's what the IEC has to do. It may very well be that the work of the IEC will be concluded far ahead of court processes. And once its work has been done, it will produce a report with recommendations that should serve before the structure of the organization, the PEC. And the PEC will have to contend with those recommendations. It will have to reflect on them. It will have to determine what kind of actions must be taken in the context of the work that has been produced by the Intergrid Commission. So the two processes are not dependent on each other, and they are not even meant to wait for one another. In fact, if the court cases were to be dropped tomorrow, for instance, and before the Intergrid Commission considers the matter, it will mean that at that stage, there is nothing that needs to be referred to the Intergrid Commission. Because the reason why comrades are referred to the Intergrid Commission arises from the fact that they are charged and they are undergoing a court case. On the issues raised by Tuba, I think we've dealt with the first one about if the IEC finds them guilty and the court clears them. I think we've dealt with that. Actually, it is possible, by the way. It is possible that the Intergrid Commission can carry its work ahead of court and produce an outcome that says you are definitely having this issue impacting on the image of the ANC. And it will be making that conclusion on the strength of the evidence before it. Remember, which may ultimately be altered when the court comes to a different conclusion. So that is the understanding that we have in the organization around that. Whether the decision was, the matter that the provincial chairperson has explained, and I want to weigh in on that issue as well. Last year when we decided to make changes, both in the eThekwini Metropolitan Municipality and Umsunduzi Local Municipality, part of the conversation that took place in the provincial officials and the national officials was that we had an intention to have some of these comrades redeployed away from their current positions, meaning from the municipalities where they were located. In fact, as the chair was saying earlier on, the decision in principle was that they need to be redeployed, especially Comrade Zandile Kumet, should be redeployed somewhere else. And somewhere else would have meant many things. It would have meant a national parliament, it would have meant a provincial parliament, or any other deployment for which she can be suitable for. It so happened that we could not implement that decision because at the time the list was closed. And you couldn't make any changes on the list because the law did not permit for that to happen. Now that the opportunity availed itself, we took advantage of that, and in doing so, we consulted with the national leadership because we wanted them to, first and foremost, to remember the undertaking we'd made last time. But secondly, to have their support in the implementation of that decision, for them to appreciate that we're acting in the best interest of the ANC and in the best interest of the people of KwaZulu-Natal. So the NEC national officials agreed with us. They agreed that the decision we're taking is correct and we must go ahead and implement it. We must separate that agreement and support of the national officials with the backlash that subsequently followed the decision. And that is why the PEC was honest this morning. It was admitting that clearly in the course of our struggle, there will be instances where we arrive at certain positions that are understood and objected by society on the basis not of any other reasons, but on the basis of us not appearing to be absolutely loyal to our own positions. And that is why the PEC said, we have listened to our people, we care about what they say, and we have to do something to demonstrate that we do not only listen to them, but we are acting on the basis of what they were saying. And I think the Deputy Secretary General, when she spoke following the National Working Committee meeting on the matter, well, I hear what Ayanda is saying, that she appeared a bit reluctant or to explain it. What I heard, which I can speak on with some degree of authority, I heard when she was saying that the provincial leadership of the ANC will have to come and explain its position in the National Executive Committee. And of course, that did not mean they, as the national officials, had not explained the matter to the working committee. But it was because of the widespread condemnation of the decision that she felt that a part of what is still going to have to be done is that the Provincial Executive Committee, more and above a report that ordinarily will come from the National Working Committee, will still have to stand up and explain its own positions in the National Executive Committee. I think that we're prepared to do that. The two of us are quite capable to go and advance the positions that we've adopted, including its limitations and the challenges that emerge out of those positions. But I think that is what I understood the DSG to be saying. Let me stop there and leave the rest of the other questions to the provincial chairperson.
No, thanks. I think my addition will be on a few issues. The ability of the ANC to self-correct, it's important. And in this case, we are saying as the ANC, yes, politically, there was a decision taken. We have implemented it. There is a response from the society. And we must show that we are listening to the society too, while we don't undermine the rights of the comrades who are affected. So that's why we are saying we are taking the matter to the Integrity Commission. The ANC must be able to listen and go through a process of self-correction. The process of organizational renewal calls on us to always ensure that we go through self-introspection. There is what is called in the ANC self-criticism and constructive criticism, where the ANC itself go through evaluating and assessing its own conduct and its own approach in dealing with issues. So the best we have found in solving this situation is this process, which was defined by the National Conference. Why it has taken so long? I think the National have been trying to grapple with this issue, trying to put in place the commission, trying to ensure that there are guidelines, which I believe the NEC will finalize that. But what have we done as the province? We have been consistent, and you will remember that there were comrades who were once arrested, mayors. We took the same decision, that the comrades must step down until their matters are heard. And while that happened, those comrades the cases were withdrawn. And we must also, because the PEC have been emphatic on that it also causes a problem when people are charged and the process of prosecution does not take place. It causes a problem. Because once, whether cases are withdrawn, then those comrades will be told that, no, that one comrade was once charged and all of that. So we've been consistent. It's not for the first time. When mayors, some comrades who were mayors were charged, we took a decision that they must step down. And then their cases were withdrawn. We then said, no, let them continue. So it's not that we have not been acting as KwaZulu-Natal. We are not going to speak for national here, nor preempt the NEC meeting. We are not going to make that mistake. By the way, we are not sources. We speak openly. So that's why the NEC will have to speak for itself through the spokesperson and the SG. But our view, in line with the decision of the PEC, will be presented as such. If those views are accepted nationally, that will be fine. And it is not only us, there are a number of other structures in the organization that are working in line with this direction. Now, I think the last question is about the service delivery when it happens to councillors. That question is critical. That's why we are saying let us build the capacity of the Integrity Commission to deal with issues with speed and within the reasonable space of time, so that the service delivery is not affected. But in a case where there is no ward councillor, the ANC has a standard procedure. Once you don't have a ward councillor, either because of a suspension, we look for a closer PR councillor who will go there and continue with the work that is done. We're not going to compromise service delivery. We are in government to advance the cause of the ANC. The internal challenges and constraints in the ANC must not handicap us in government. We live to change. We exist to unite the people and lead them in the struggle. And part of that struggle is to ensure that we expedite transformation and service delivery. I think that was the last question.
I think there's one issue that has to do, before those ones, there's one issue that has to
The
do,
last round.
one issue that has to do with what Pungula calls Zandile supporters. You know, last year, when Comrade Zandile and others were recalled, we had this notion that there were people who were called Zandile supporters. And we engaged with Comrade Zandile at that time. And she was very clear, she came out very clear that she has no grouping of supporters of her own. She belongs to the ANC. It may very well be that there would be certain people, as there were last year, that were unhappy about certain decisions. Now, we equally want to dismiss that there are some Zandile supporters, because I don't think there is an existence of such. And we met with Comrade Zandile yesterday, as we did with Comrade Provincial Deputy Chairperson. The process we're involved in is a process that they embraced. They were part of it. They are comrades of the ANC. They appreciate the difficulty we find ourselves in as a movement, and that sacrifices have to be made in some way. The question about what the salaries, what happened? I think the chair will deal with that question.
Let me deal with it in a simple way. In case you've got a suspension in the industry you are working in, what happens? That's what you must first ask. You get suspended. It is called
Suspension with pay.
It's suspension with pay. So that's what happens. But in our case, we are saying, yes, these comrades will not resign, but they are stepping down. But we would want to see the Integrity Commission working on this case with speed, so that in a period of a month or so, we get the results and the report. So we will ensure that it is processed within a reasonable space of time. We know that the next cry is about paying people who are not at work, and that we are conscious to that. We even discussed it. So we are going to ensure that the matter is expedited and handled within a short space of time.
Last round of, can we start Kalangalo Olango, Bobanamuk? Yes, Erasmus. Can we start with him first? Nzolandela, 1, 2. I and not 2 bills really. I'm a spokesperson and ourselves. Can we start?
Erasmus. Erasmus.
Yeah.
Okay. Suba?
Mine would just be either way. Question. Now that we're dealing with the issue that involves the integrity of the party and the image, the good standing of the organization, what is the position of the PEC? I will specifically talk to the provincial secretary and the chairperson. What is your view in the matter that involves the president of the party and the campaign, the CF17 campaign?
Okay. There was another hand at this side. So right, to be right.
Now, maybe we need to be clear. What we did here, you're going to afford the same spokesperson we're talking about. You talk to her. So you can't afford that. Secondly, what I want you to know, if I were a judge, I would have found DSG untruthful anyway. Because what she said there, you know, when the PC says they were part of the decision last year, and they were consulted before Mama was deployed, but JC said the PC will have to explain themselves. How did they arrive at that the decision? And also the NEC will take a final decision whether they accept or reject it. Now, for someone who was part of everything, the best thing she should have done was to defend the position. She did not. So it was
No.
Mani, okay, Mage, khona umbuzo la. Oh, okay, Mage, qale ngentokazi le uzogcina nsizwa yakithi.
When the ANC removed Umamzandile Eteguni together with the EXCO and the mayor of Msunduzi together with the EXCO there last year, you guys said it had nothing to do with the corruption case. There was a PwC report that looked into their fitnesses to hold office. And you guys came short of saying she was incompetent. Why is she worthy of going to the legislature if she wasn't good enough for it to be? And I understand that she wasn't the only person who was recalled. What about the other people, including those of Msunduzi? Are you looking out for her only, or?
Okay. Iphuma lapha ngemuva. Yeah.
Just to clarify, there are some of your ANC members might be interested in contesting in DGMs as leaders in the branches and also in regions. Does this decision mean that maybe if the conference maybe is which we have maybe in September before the matter is taken to the commission, to the commission, does that member won't be allowed to contest the position during the conference or during the DGM?
That was the last round of questions. No Pala will come in, no shallow sequel.
Let me start from the end, from what Vusi is saying. If we're to assume that the conference was taking place tomorrow, which is not the case, effectively the decision means that comrades, without having gone through the integrity processes, would not ideally be permitted to stand. That's the simple language about it. And and that's the understanding that these comrades that we're talking about have also internalized and accepted. And then let me come to the question by Zimasa, am I right? Last year, you are quite correct. When we advanced the reasons why comrades were recalled in all municipalities where we made changes, we indicated then, and we still maintain that, it was on the basis of the inability of the collectives at the time to discharge their responsibilities in accordance with the expectations of the ANC. That was the decision. But the question arose last year, which I had to deal with because I was the one who had to deal with that. The question arose from one journalist who was saying, but comrade, but you know, Malawi ANC, when you say this comrade cannot perform her responsibilities as the mayor or as a speaker or an ESCO member, why do you still retain them in the council? And my response then, which is still relevant today, was that the mere fact that, for instance, I may be having difficulties to do my work effectively as provincial secretary of the ANC doesn't mean that I can't be an additional member of the PEC. That is the simplest way we can explain it. It doesn't mean that if I can't be an effective provincial secretary of the ANC, if that judgment were to be made, it therefore means that I'm completely disqualified for any other responsibilities in society. Our own view, Zimas, I can say you are not satisfied. Let me extend and respond to this question. For instance, there is an understanding that in society needs to be corrected, which suggests that the role of being an MPL or an MP is much more complex than being in the council. That narrative is also intending to reduce local government to be nothing, just a dumping zone. While in actual fact, the reality is that it's more complex to run the local government sphere of our government as opposed to the provincial one, because in the local government, you don't have this clear, discernible distinction between the executive and the lawmakers. They are in a way together. And it's more complex. The system there is very, very complex. So I don't think that we should really be sold into the notion that says, when you leave local government to the province, it's a promotion. It's not a promotion. It's a different responsibility that we are assigned on, and we are assigned as an ordinary member of the legislature, whether it's a national legislature or it's a provincial legislature. I know the chair is going to deal with the question around the DSG. I want to make a short comment about it, as I explained it earlier on. The report to the national officials of the ANC came from KwaZulu-Natal. It is the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal that went to engage the national officials about changes that it wants to make, particularly in legislatures. Remember when we were engaging with the national leadership last year, it was not about a specific area of deployment. But now we had to go back and talk about something specific as a legislature as well as the national parliament. It's not correct to believe that the TSG was untruthful when she explained, when she was saying that the matter has been presented before the national leadership, and the provincial leadership of KwaZulu-Natal will still be expected to come to the National Executive Committee and explain their own reason. It's something that happens in the ANC. Some of these things that are usually not publicly communicated. Usually you have interaction with the structure. A report is taken to the NEC through the SGO, as it will be the case. And then the province in the NEC, when the SG is done with the report on matters that has to do with KwaZulu-Natal, the province will always be given an opportunity to give a further explanation or justification of the decision that it has taken. I don't think the DSG had anything to defend. I think she was quite correct when she says the matter is still going to be discussed in the National Executive Committee. She was not necessarily abdicating a responsibility to defend the decision. In fact, in any sense, the working committee recommends to the NEC. What needs to be defended is what emerges from the National Executive Committee, because that becomes a binding decision of the organization in the whole country. So I think we must understand it in that way, not as some kind of a comrade that decided not to defend the decision. The national officials were with us in this conversation. They are also with us on the recognition that a decision that we've taken has created complications. And they were expecting us to help them to think through with them on how best should we attend to the consequences of our own decision. That is how we understood the TSG when she spoke on the matter in public. Thanks. I think let me leave the other few questions to the chair.
No, thanks. Let me add on this question. This matter is not a matter of the National Executive Committee to process. It is the PEC that processed it, having agreed last year, as Nobala is saying. So when we go there, we will have to clarify ourselves. And it is always the case why this decision was taken, and then we clarify, we explain that. And that's what the DSG was saying. The fact that the decision, the engagement involved them, does not elevate the matter to the NEC, to the officials, as if they are the one who have started it now. The principal decision was taken, but the implementation done now need to be still explained by us, as we are going to do it in the NEC. With regard to this issue raised by its death, I think it's the same. The issue of the fact that they will be still paid. For us, it is to ensure that they take leave, and with immediate effect, the commission deal with that matter within a short space of time. We are mindful of the complaint and the view that will come if the matter drags. And that's why part of the ANC decision is that even in governance, we must deal with issues where you've got suspensions that take months, and we must always ensure that issues are processed on time. So that is in our minds, and we are dealing with it as such. Nopala answered this fishing question about whether one can contest leading to BGMs and conferences. It's one of those fishing questions that you'll always find, and I think Nopala addressed it fairly. You will not expect someone who is instructed to be to step aside to be contesting. But it's an academic question in this case. It helps you to know what will happen in case it happens. But for now, because there are no conferences taking place, it remains academic. And we take note of that, and we always know. I have a question. Let me add on one issue that was asked about the decision of the PEC. We never decided on an individual. I think that must be clear. We said the comrades, both political and administratively, there is a challenge in eThekwini. And then we said the whole EXCO must step down. It was not based on an individual person that, no, you have failed. We said, no, the collective have not provided the envisaged leadership. We further said, even administratively, there is a decline. And that was the decision of the PEC in as far as eThekwini matter. And it doesn't mean that because comrades were recalled, they can't be deployed somewhere. They can still be deployed in the ANC decides so. But they must then ensure that where they go, they then build and they could make contribution as expected. I think that was the last question, and I was just adding because it has been covered. Thank you.
The last issue, the last one now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. The issue of the president, as we are answering about our own situation, we are going to engage with that matter if it arises in the NEC. If it is about the question of the campaign going to the national conference, it is the NEC that must deal with that matter. We will participate, we are part of the members of the NEC. Unfortunately, we don't preempt the structures of the organization. We can't speak for the NEC before it meets. So we will make our contribution in the NEC if that matter arises.
Thank you. We think we are done for the day. Sibonge, all of you with your presence. We'll await, I think, from now onwards, the NEC sitting over the weekend and its conclusion on the matters. Siyabonga.
Thank you.
702 interview. Okay.